Spinning up a new server used to be exciting. Now, it usually just feels like setting a financial trap for yourself. On one end of the spectrum, you have the dirt cheap, bare bones virtual private servers. They look great on a pricing page, but you end up spending your weekend manually configuring firewalls and writing custom bash scripts just to keep your backups running. On the other end, you have massive ecosystems like AWS. You get infinite microservices and total control, but everything is metered down to the millisecond. That hyper-granular billing is exactly what leads to bill shock. A sudden traffic spike, some unexpected egress data, or too many API calls, and your monthly invoice suddenly looks like a car payment. It leaves developers choosing between two bad options: waste your valuable time on server administration, or waste your budget navigating complex cloud meters. Xuda Cloud Hosting targets that massive gap in the middle. They offer the raw power of an enterprise cloud, but keep it wrapped in a flat-rate pricing model. If we map the current hosting landscape on this chart, we can see the divide. We have cost predictability on the bottom axis and out-of-the-box capability on the side. AWS sits high on capability but low on predictability, while legacy VPS providers offer stable pricing but require you to build your own infrastructure tools. Xuda positions itself in that empty top right quadrant, aiming to give you high capability without the variable costs. To see if they actually pull this off, we need to run the math. We're going to compare Xuda's flat-rate ecosystem directly against industry standards like DigitalOcean, Linode, Vultr, and AWS Lightsail. If Xuda's numbers hold up, it means you can bypass the complexity tax of modern hosting and get straight to building your application. When evaluating flat-rate providers, the advertised entry price is rarely what you actually pay at the end of the month. Looking at this pricing matrix, Xuda's entry tier sits at $6 a month. That's slightly higher than the baseline $4 or $5 you see from DigitalOcean or Linode, and higher than Lightsail's $350. But those lower prices are missing a critical piece of infrastructure. If you are running a production app, automated backups are not optional. You must have them. On platforms like DigitalOcean and Vultr, enabling backups adds an automatic 20% markup to your bill. Xuda includes scheduled automated backups natively in that $6 base rate. There is a trade-off here. By using Xuda's bundled system, you get free, easy rollbacks directly from their dashboard. What you actually lose is the hyper-granular lifecycle scripting you could build from scratch using something like AWS S3. Xuda also builds a generous, flat-rate data transfer allowance into every single plan, shielding you from sudden egress charges. Once you factor in the mandatory Day 2 operational tools, Xuda's $6 entry point actually nets out to a lower total cost of ownership. Saving a few dollars a month is nice, but for web agencies and multi-client developers, the real metric that matters is your time. Managing 20 servers requires a lot more overhead than managing 2. Most standard providers rely on basic tagging systems. On Linode or Vultr, your servers exist in a flat hierarchy. If you need to update firewall rules for 5 servers handling one specific client, you are configuring those nodes one by one. Xuda handles this differently, through a native project-based architecture. You group your specific instances together logically, right from the dashboard. As you can see in this network model, those grouped nodes share resources. You can apply a single shared firewall policy to an entire project group simultaneously, creating instant network isolation for that specific client without touching each individual server. To take advantage of this, you have to adapt your workflow to Xuda's specific user interface, rather than relying on standard infrastructure as code tools right out of the gate. But for solo developers and agencies, native project grouping drastically reduces administrative friction. The effort required to secure your client's infrastructure stays flat, even as your server count grows. Eventually, your database is going to grow. Data-heavy analytics pipelines and large NoSQL databases require massive amounts of fast local storage. This is where entry-level clouds usually force a migration. AWS Lightsail caps out at 320 gigabytes of mixed SSD storage, and DigitalOcean hits its ceiling at 1 terabyte. Xuda answers this with their large VPS tier, which runs entirely on ultra-fast NVMe solid-state drives, instead of older mixed SSD tech. This chart illustrates the runway difference. While Lightsail stops at 320 gigs and DigitalOcean at 1 terabyte, Xuda lets you scale a single node up to 7 terabytes of NVMe storage. Relying on a massive single node is a specific architectural choice. If your database eventually exceeds that 7 terabyte ceiling, you will have to manually implement application-level sharding to split your data across multiple servers. However, for the vast majority of growing projects, 7 terabytes provides enough raw space to delay the immense complexity of multi-node database architecture for years. The hardware is there, but paying for resources you don't need defeats the purpose of a flat-rate platform. Let's look at how to match Xuda's tiers to your specific use case. What is your primary workload? Basic web apps route to the $6 shared tier for dynamic power. Front-end servers needing sustained compute follow the optimized tier for its 2-to-1 memory to CPU ratio. Large NoSQL databases take the analytics path to the large NVMe tier. Because these 4 shapes all exist on the exact same platform, your business can scale seamlessly between them. You just resize from the dashboard without migrating your data to a new provider. Let's be clear about who this is not for. If you have an enterprise platform engineering team that requires hundreds of interconnected microservices, or you are heavily invested in proprietary serverless ecosystems, you should stay on AWS. But if you are a bootstrapper, a solo developer, or a web agency, your priority is predictable growth. You need powerful servers without the massive complexity tax. Xuda lets you deploy close to your users across 16 data centers. You can start from a clean Linux distro or use their one-click image library to deploy fully configured application stacks like WordPress or MySQL in seconds. The best way to evaluate it is to test it yourself. Spin up a $6 staging environment on Xuda this week. Use it to benchmark their dashboard and test those NVMe read-write speeds against whatever host you are currently using. Infrastructure should be a silent utility. It should respect your time and your budget, so you can stop managing servers and get back to actually building your product.